really loud, like I can't hear you.
Oh, really? Okay. Fading the music. Is that better? Can you hear me at all? No?
I can hear you, but you're super quiet.
Okay. It'll work better as I fade. Welcome to the show, everybody. You can see the first-hand technical difficulties that will come up. We do live to tape, as they say in the 1980s. We just kind of wing it here on the show. It says Third Act Thursday behind me, but we're going to try a different. That's music. There we go. We're going to do a little bit of a different theme. It's going to be Thrive Thursday. It's a new
Nice.
buzzy phrase I've come up with. And what I want to discuss today with Megan, by the way, co-host with the most, Megan. Hello, Megan.
Hello, hello.
What we're going to discuss today is the practice and the importance of being able to accept, allow, hear compliments, which I think is, for me, I remember especially in early recovery, and even well into my sobriety and recovery, it had always been a tricky thing for me to accept compliments. I would often do like, oh, it's, no, like, or immediately reciprocate it to the person, like, oh, you're great, oh, you're great, just like really deflective, or like kind of take shelter from it, you know what I mean, or have some like false modesty, you know what I mean, where inside my like inner child's like, yeah, that feels great, this is what I crave and want, but then on the outside be like, no, I still gotta, like, I got so long, so much longer to go, right? And things of this nature. So there's many,
Yeah.
many different ways that it shows up in my experience for accepting compliments. And I can be perfectly honest by saying it's something that I very much crave as part of like human connection and like collaboration with people. I love I'm like a plant to water for getting like acknowledgement, right? But I feel that it's like one of these things that I have been so inconsistent with my practice of, and I've had these three different distinct traits about me that have been very avoidant or deflective of getting them, that I
Hmm.
don't really accept them, and as a result, I'm not really attracting it. And then as a result, I go, well, crap, like, what am I doing? Why am I not getting acknowledged or accepted?
Hmm.
And just now realizing this far into my life journey that it's
Yeah.
myself that has been putting up these barriers to be able to do it. So it's an important thing. I mean, I made it sound complex because it kind of is. It is challenging. It isn't just, and so it's a learned thing. And we've talked a lot about like going back to basics on a lot of our different programs, and some of our like the online I'm trying to say the seminars that we've ran,
Hmm.
and so basics for me would just be, and I'm interested to see what you think about this. Is this when somebody says thank you to you or has a very specific thing that they liked about what you did in a presentation or a performance or whatever it may be, start with just thank you, right?
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
it, and sit with it, which is actually more challenging than it sounds. That was
Yeah.
very challenging for me to do. Just breathe into it and say thank you. Accept it. Feel it.
Hmm.
Don't feel the need to reciprocate. Don't feel the need to deflect. Don't feel the need to take shelter. Don't feel the need to put up this, like veil of false modesty. Sit
Hmm.
with it, feel it, accept it, and practice that. That would be my first piece of advice. What do you have to say about it, Megan?
Yeah, I have so many thoughts, so I hope I can remember them all as we go. But absolutely, like I agree. And same thing, I have always had a hard time taking compliments, but in certain ways, and that comes down to how I see myself or what I believe about myself. So,
Mm-hmm.
in terms of my work ethic or things that I achieve, like in my work life, I have a really, I guess, easy time taking compliments. I will say thank you and just leave it at that because I believe in my work ethic, and it's really, I guess, easy again for me to compliment myself in terms of my work ethic. Where I don't take compliments well is in terms of my appearance, because I've always been really hard on myself in terms of my appearance, whether it's like my weight or just features that I don't like about myself. So for instance, even just yesterday, I hopped onto a Zoom meeting and my coworker was like, "Oh my gosh, you just always have the most like beautiful glowy skin," she said. And I immediately was like, "Oh my God, I look like a train wreck today." No, like you're gorgeous. Look at your skin, right? Whereas I should have just been like, "Thank you." But that is one realm of me that I've always had a hard time practicing acceptance around is my physical appearance. So in that way, I would love to do some more work around just saying thank you and leaving it at that.
Mm, that's a really good like differentiation. Is yes, exactly like you say, like different realms of
Mhm.
yourself or parts of your personality or however you want to verbalize it for sure. And yeah, I think that would safe to say that comes down to like you say the way you feel about yourself or your confidence or your and I want to get into the word confidence too as well, but like, yeah, is that that's more or less what you're saying, right? Is like how
Yeah,
comfortable you are with a certain aspect of yourself
for sure.
allows is easier for you to. Okay, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
actually a really good, interesting point. That yeah, it's super cool.
Like if you asked me to give you a list of 5 things that I'm really good at work, I could probably rattle them off. But if you said, Megan, tell me 5 things that you like about your appearance, I'd be like, oh, like I would give them to you, but it would be hard for me and I probably wouldn't like really believe in them.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah.
No, that's a super cool like little wrinkle to throw in there for sure. So
Yeah.
that's
And for
yeah.
you, it sounds like words of like affirmation is really important to you.
Yes, definitely. So, and and this is a good, kind of trail to go off into as well. Is like, so why? What is missing in my needs that I feel the need or I desire external, praise for me to feel good about myself? And that's where we can get into a little bit more of like the conversation about confidence. So, what is confidence? Is sort of this invisible thing, right? But is like, so is it based on egoic needs, or is there like this natural, actual confidence that's I think is inside of all of us that we, it's a matter of unlocking or finding, right? So
Mhm.
confidence to me, and I'm interested to see what your like sort of definition or take on it. We're beyond Webster's definition, like actual, how it shows up in your life and your in context of your life. For me, it's like it's based on like competency. Like I feel like
Mm.
the ability to whatever comes my way, be able to go with it. I feel like
Yeah.
secure and safe in my abilities, my experience level, and so that's like when the old profession when I was like 6 years as assistant store manager. I had no like there's gonna be changes and different things that come throughout the day, and I was like I can roll with any of this. Like no
Yeah.
matter what kind of personality type or whatever happens, I had enough competency and life experience and just experience, and there as a result the byproduct is confidence, right? So
Totally.
competency leads to confidence
Yeah.
as opposed to that sort of like almost false bravado where it's fake it till you make it, and like all you have to do is be confident, and then that's like the other side of it. So what is
Yeah.
how does confidence show up in your life?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think, especially when you're looking at a career, when I'm talking about my career, yeah, the more competent I get in it, the more my confidence grows and the more that I'm like really solid in believing that I'm good at my job. Whereas if we bring it back to me talking about my looks, like it's how would I grow like competency in that? I can't really, right? And so it
Mm-hmm.
comes down to how I speak to myself really is where my confidence has grown or not grown because I'm
Mm.
really quick to like look in the mirror and pick myself apart. But if I practice looking in the mirror and complimenting myself, my confidence would grow in how I view my outward appearance.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's a yeah, and that's a great practice, and it's and worth mentioning because like when people are going through a stage of reinventing and finding themselves again, um,
Yeah.
it is easy to, especially like looks and appearances, and some of that is like where the shame and was some perhaps one of the motives for using a substance to numb out anyways is that you don't feel
Mhm.
comfortable in your own skin. You don't feel comfortable when you look at yourself in the mirror, right? So
Mhm.
and that's a very important, it's and what we have in this course is like the importance of words, and like you and I have done like language games and everything before, so
Yeah.
absolutely very important to circle back to that too. It is incredibly important how we are talking to ourselves, and
Hmm.
being uh, careful about how we're showing up to for ourselves. Like for example, if we're looking in the mirror, are we going to gravitate right to that, like those three things that have been bugging us about our
Yeah.
facial appearance, or are we going to be like, hey, you know what, I'm looking got some more color in my face today, like, and that is where there's a big opportunity for those in early sobriety recovery, because you will be seeing by like day 30 your skin will be so much better, you're going to be more hydrated, you won't have the bags under your eyes as much, right? So absolutely. So just try, and that would be a piece of advice, just ad lib as we're going through this, to capture that feeling and remember that feeling of
Hmm.
pride based on the way that your outward appearance is looking because of the work that you're doing inside.
Hmm. Hmm. And you know what I was thinking about when you first started talking when we got on was how I used to receive if someone told me they loved me, like particularly
Mm,
like a romantic partner. So
yeah.
I remember the relationship I was in prior to when I met my husband. And anytime that somebody would say, I love you, I'd always be like, I love you too. Right. And I would say, I love you too. But then if I said, I love you, my partner at the time sometimes wouldn't say it back. And I would be like so offended by that. And then when I approached him on that, like, why don't you say it back? He would say, well, don't you think it's nice to just receive it and like sit in it and
Mm,
not feel compelled to say it back? Like he said, like, of course I love you, but I don't always need to say it back for you to feel that. And I just want to receive it when you tell me you love me. And that was
mm,
like such an important learning for me. And so
yeah.
even now with my husband, if he says, I love you, I just like receive it and sit in it sometimes and like really kind of like absorb it and listen
Mm,
to it, because when you're so quick to be like, I love you too, it's like you just kind of miss the moment of someone expressing that to you. So
yeah.
that's just what I was thinking about when you first started talking, was like that shift around how I either say I love you or receive I love you.
Yeah, that's a big one, and I'm glad you brought it up because I was on the men's group weekend that I did about a month ago, and that was a big, to because we did talk about like receiving compliments and such, and that was like one of the prime examples that they used. He's like, isn't
Okay.
but when you think exactly when you're saying a partner or somebody that's really mom or brother or whatever, a family relationship, somebody you feel strongly about, how quickly it is it's like this, you know, as quick as they say it, you're as quick to like
Yeah, love you
reciprocate.
too, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, exactly. And it's just like, so, and, granted, there's a time and place for that if you're excited, enthusiastic, but to your point, absolutely. So I'm really, fortunate and glad you brought that part up for sure. Um, Aside from that, and, like this has been a great conversation about, the practice, and, that's what we're very clear about the majority of the things that we bring up on these shows is framework, the framing, like prefacing it with it's a practice, right? It isn't
Mhm.
something that's going to happen. You're going to have to be. And what is practice? What is practice? It's consistency. It's being aware. It's being aware of when you make a mistake and correcting it with.
Mhm.
So it's all rolled into that. Um, the final just note here is like to take it a little bit step further is to be able to accept a compliment, but also to celebrate a win. So celebrate yourself. So that's a
Mhm.
natural extension of you've taken a compliment. Somewhere along the line, you're not being as hard on in your inner dialogue with yourself. Maybe you can compliment yourself and go, "Damn, you did pretty good there." So that is a natural extension, that being celebrate the wins from being able to accept compliments. And so um, how does that show up in your life? We have talked about in even the previous episode, the achiever, the doer, where it's just like, one thing crossed off the list. What's next?
Mhm.
So I'm
Mhm.
curious to see how that has shown up in your life now, as far as being able to again sit with something and be like, you know what, I did good, or us as parents, like you and your husband, we did good there, and like sharing that kind
Yeah.
of a moment, and sitting with that, because to me
Yeah.
that's just a natural extension of accepting a compliment as well. How has that shown up for you?
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely been something that I've been more intentional with practicing, because I think I kind of grew up in an environment where like celebrating wins was maybe considered being like boisterous or like bragging about yourself.
Yep.
And I think that just as a society, we deem that as like a negative thing to be like a bragger, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it's important for me to celebrate my own wins and not always look for someone else to celebrate my win. And so, for instance, even this morning, which was something that used to be really out of my comfort zone, I just have a friend group like text chain. And so I just texted them to let them know about my coaching client. And then I put a period on the end and said, I'm so proud of myself, which is something I would have never really like said before because I would have
Yeah.
been worried that they would have been like, oh, look at this chick bragging.
Yeah.
But I worked through that and sent the text anyways because I needed to acknowledge it for myself,
Yeah.
irregardless if they gave me an applause or not, which of course they did because they're my friends. But that was not the purpose of the text. The purpose of the text was because that's an intentional way that I celebrate myself by sharing with others.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm still practicing it. 33 years old, still practicing.
Yeah, right. Right. And I think so there's there's a distinction between bragging and patting yourself on the back. So for me, like any like goal setting, future goal setting, fuel can be derived from celebrating something that you've done before. You can look back and go, I did this. It's kind of like the moon landing thing, right? I landed on the moon.
Yeah.
Certainly I can, you know what I mean? Certainly I can do this,
Yeah.
right? So that is, I think it's intent. For me, it's just like riffing on this. Like I think it's intent. If it's egoic need for like to be seen or heard or patted on the back from somebody else,
Mhm.
okay, well, maybe celebrating the win at that point does come off as braggadocious because the intent is to be like, yeah, look at me, I'm the best, right? Versus the intent of, you know, I guess, how else to verbalize it? I can see the one, but for the other one, it's like the intent of just staying open about it. Like, because
Mhm.
if you're not celebrating the win, in a sense, you're minimizing what you're
Mhm.
accomplishing. I just view it as like it's heart speak. Like you're closing your heart chakra a bit because you're not fully allowing yourself to be seen and then
Mhm.
verbalizing it in such a way with the intent of you're helping other people or there's that intention. If there's a true pure genuine intention behind it, nobody can take that away from you if you're celebrating a win for those reasons, those like genuine reasons. I think
Yeah,
that's
and
like
I think it comes back to like just really knowing yourself and like getting in touch with the again intention behind however you're sending it out. Like for me, when I sent the text, I know myself so well that to now see it as something that I'm doing for my own self work, not that I'm sending the text because I need them to send the praise.
yes,
Um,
yes,
and
perfect.
even last night, like when my husband was like celebrating it with me, I felt like the uncomfortableness rise and I felt the need to want to downplay it because then he like got my kids involved and was like, say congratulations, mommy. And I wanted to be like, no, 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 no. And so stopping that from almost like bubbling up and then coming out of my mouth again takes practice, right? I
Mm,
felt it bubble, but then I was like, no, Megan, like just receive this, receive it, receive it,
yeah,
receive it, receive it, right?
yeah.
Um,
No, that's
I
great.
think that's just a continual theme we always talk about is that all of these types of new behavior changes take practice. It
Mm-hmm.
takes you being conscious of it. It takes you being intentional with it,
Mm-hmm.
stopping yourself before it happens, right? Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's not something you're just like off and done with.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? Anyway, another key thing to mention is there's some uncomfortability that you have to sit
Yeah.
in and with, right? Like it's like yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm just thinking because I was at one of those like outdoor spas. So when you go into like the really cold pool, it's like it takes a little bit of like getting into. That's how I kind of view something that like gets you out of your comfort zone. You're like initially it's just like it feels really weird, but as soon as you sit with it, okay, no, I get this. I can do this now,
Yeah.
right? So that's when you're mentioning all the different things that were bubbling up inside you, the overall framework of it seems it's uncomfortable, you know
Mhm.
and there's like it's easy to want to deflect or avoid to get to that uncomfortableness. No, but if we're suggesting sit with it, and there that's the practice, right? Getting
Mhm.
practiced with you know getting into those states and be like, okay, breathe into it, it's not so bad. Now the water temperature is good, I can handle this now, right? So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
super cool.
Totally.
Excellent. All right, any final thoughts I think this is great.
No, I think
Yeah,
that's great. Yeah, it was a great conversation.
accepting compliments and celebrating the wins. Thanks for tuning in.